Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Powerhouse Podcast. I am beyond delighted with my guest who is joining me in the ring today. Dr. Rhoberta Shaler is just a phenomenal powerhouse, and I cannot wait to tell you more about how she is creating massive change and just showing up in this world. As you all know, before I introduce her properly, you know that this is our platform to really get into a space to have bigger conversations around what leadership truly is, and understanding that leadership is a choice. It's how we choose to show up, how we choose to serve others, and how we choose to take personal responsibility in that space. And we get into the big, meaty, courageous conversations. And so this is an opportunity to really play in a space, get a little raw, and just see where our conversation goes. So with that, before I formally introduce her, let me just welcome Dr. Rhoberta to this show. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Oh, thanks, Candy. I've been looking forward to this. It'll be fun to chat.
Oh, it will. And I, just so that all of you know, I absolutely adore this woman, and you are going to see why in a very quick time. So first, let me just tell you that she is the relationship help doctor. Dr. Rhoberta provides urgent and ongoing care for relationships in crisis. Even the United States Marines have called on her for help. That's pretty powerful. She particularly helps the partners, exes, and adult children of relentlessly difficult people she calls hijackals. And I cannot wait for her to talk a little bit more about what that means. She helps them save their sanity, stop their crazy making. She defines hijackals as people who hijack relationships. We all know those people, for their own purposes while relentlessly scavenging them for power, status, and control. Rhoberta offers insights, strategies, and support you need to reclaim hope, confidence, and your sanity when dealing with the constant uncertainty and jaw-dropping behaviors of hijackals in your life, at home, and at work. This is going to be a powerful conversation, I assure you. She is the author of 16 books. I told you she's a powerhouse, including her new hijackal ebook series, Escaping the Hijackal Trap, the definitive guide to dealing with relentlessly difficult people, which is available at Amazon. And with that, I could go on and on about why this woman is so powerful and amazing and why I wanted to invite her to this show. But Rhoberta, talk about how you arrived at this space around hijackals, and, you know, how did that start to impact the work that you're doing?
Well, I was born into it. That's the truth of it. I was born into a lair of hijackals. All of my father's family were hijackals. My father, on the other hand, was an extreme passive aggressive, which is what happens to some people in those families. And then my mom went off and had electroshock therapy and came back a full-blown hijackal. So I didn't know all that, of course, at the beginning of my career. I have a doctorate in psychology. I was raising kids. I was doing life as we all are in our early 20s and 30s. And I always knew something was well off, and I had lots of words for it. But it wasn't until I really tried to look into it in my 20s and found there was no help. People did not understand. And the reason for that, Candy, is if you're in a home with a hijackal, if you're married to one or you're the child of one, they put on the public face of perfection. And when you go and you say, this is what happens to me, people say, oh, and if you're young, oh, no, your parents are the salt of the earth. And so you don't get any support, and you get re-wounded and told that you're not telling the truth. So I had to start developing programs once I really realized what had happened to me. Also, I was abused by several people, including in my family. And there were all those pieces, and the help was not there at that time. So as I developed my couples practice, I started noticing I always worked in corporate in conflict management, which is why I talked to the Marines. But I wanted to keep honing, and finally I thought there has to be a non-clinical name for these people. Because when you go to the Google Goddess, and don't do this, you go to the Google Goddess and you say, my partner or my parent or my colleague is doing this, the Google Goddess, without any credentials at all, spits out a diagnosis.
Right.
And that's not a good idea, because when you think somebody else has a diagnosis, you start saying, it's their fault. They do. And what about you? you're there, you're not doing your own work because now you're talking about them. So that's a very long version of how I happened to come to working particularly with the people who are the parents, the exes, the adult children, and co-workers of hijackals.
Yeah. And it's so powerful. And one, I really love the fact that being that you have a clinical background and being that you've gotten your PhD in psychology, I love the fact that you were searching for a word that was non-clinical. I think there's so much stigma and energy. To your point, it's either a shifting of responsibility, or there's just, it almost feels as if it's a box that feels a little too contained or a little too rigid, that doesn't always explain or offer fully what it feels like to experience that kind of situation. I know one of the things that drew us in, and even as you're sharing some of the transparency in your own story, there were so many things that kind of connected us together, and some of our stories are very similar. My mom actually went through electric shock treatment as well as some other family members, and understanding and experiencing some of those changes and those shifts in personality and things that happen as a result of that. There was a lot of that shame that shows up. I know for myself, being a child who, was told later on in life that my father was clinically diagnosed by the military as being narcissistic. And you've got some other things. Well, as you're growing up and as those masks keep be put on, where it's, everything's fine behind the curtain, right? And you want to protect that. And for me, I know there was shame in even communicating that or asking for help, which was part of the story that, had my rock bottom. What happens when, as a person who's experiencing one of those hijackals, and as you start to have that awareness, and as you start to really understand the effects of that and your role in that, what do you do when the shame shows up? What do you do when that space of, what did I do wrong? Because there's the shame, the guilt, the taking almost too much responsibility, as you, at least for me, it was almost an overcompensation. What do you do through that? How do you adapt or absorb that? Or
those are good words, adapt and absorb. I would also add inherit. That's what happens to us. We actually are told by a hijackal all the time, it's your fault, you're to blame, everything is your fault. And why that is the hijackal must win. They are so fearful. Now, we can have compassion for that. That doesn't mean we need to condone or enable their behavior, but a moment of compassion. They were raised in situations or went through electroshock therapy or whatever happened to create this. They didn't wake up one day and say, I think I'll be this mean, narcissistic, borderline, psychopath, sociopath, histrionic kind of person. Right. They are a result of their background. Not our responsibility, but let's understand that. And then their whole MO, because of this absolute fear that they are not good enough, is to get all over and in your face about you not being good enough, which is what we call projection, right? Mm-hmm. So everything they're afraid of is, so for them, they're going to project on you, and it's your fault and you're wrong, and I don't even know why I had you. Mm. My mother used to say to me at least once a week, it's a good thing you're smart because you're fat and ugly. Mm. And she would say things like that. Her greatest fears, right? She would say them to me. Now, when we're born, we have a very undeveloped brain. So what happens to us in the first 2 years of life is absolutely key, and people don't give it enough attention because you didn't know about it. You didn't have language. You may have a family picture somebody else painted for you, but you don't remember. But on the level of knowing who you are, you took in so much information then. That's where it starts, Candy. That's where the shame comes up. And that's perpetuated by a hijackal telling you, you're not good enough, you're always wrong, you can't do anything right. Who do you think you are, young lady? All those kind of things that say you don't deserve to take up space and draw a breath. And that's a fundamental right. And every one of us, the first step in doing our own work is to truly come to believe that we deserve to take up space and draw breath. And then the next things that I talk about all the time in my book, Kaizen for Couples, are you must know and be able to say, this is my definition of assertiveness, which we can talk about because it relates to your work. You have the absolute right to say what you think, feel, need, and want, as long as you don't talk about anybody else or say the word you.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting that you say that. And I've got a couple things even showing up as you're talking about that, because it's absolutely our responsibility to lay those expectations and boundaries down for ourselves. And because I really want to get into a conversation with you around how do you, in your perspective, and it's that space of wanting to come from a place of compassion and kindness and grace. And it's the big, powerful and, not the but it's the and that says, and how are you creating clear boundaries for yourself so that you are standing in a place that says, I am worthy to protect myself. I am worthy to say that is not okay. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is that yes, no, and thank you are complete sentences.
Yes.
When and how to use all of them. And I tell people that that you need to get really to a place where you're comfortable to say no, period, with no justification, no explanation. When you say, no, that's not okay for me, that is all that needs to be said. No, I am not. And it is that equation of, and there's a whole equation around having that conversation, which we call kind of the XYZ, which is I experienced, I observed, I noticed, I feel those powerful words that we are not taught in our culture to embrace. I feel Y as a result. So I've noticed X, I've experienced X, I feel Y as a result. And then Z is I'm proposing, could we look at this from this way to resolve and come to solution? And it's what you're saying, it's the taking the responsibility of the I in the conversation and not the you did this to me, which creates that very defensive, non-serving cycle of we're not really communicating anymore. It's just a matter of the combative, pitting against each other. But to go back to that first piece, I'm curious from your perspective, how do you effectively create boundaries to protect your self-worth, to stand in your power and offer space of compassion and kindness where you're not condoning, but maybe trying to understand and have empathy for something that feels like it's pushing on you at every level? How do you create that balance of the space in between?
Yeah, that's a huge thing to learn. So it's a good thing we're talking about it. Just to go back and comment on something you just said, when we are setting a boundary and when we are speaking about ourselves, I call that the personal weather report. That's what I wrote about in Kaizen for couples, but it applies everywhere. I teach it in the corporate thing, just as you do. But it is really important when you're speaking about the situation is to say, when this happens, not when you do that. That's the distinction you made, I made, and I just want to really highlight that because people have heard old things called iMessages, which formula that was around 30 years ago or so. And so when you do this, I feel this way. And you can't do anything except notice that that's veiled blame.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to be empowered to speak from ourselves. When I experience this, as you said, I feel this way, or I think this, or I need this, or I want this, and you're only speaking about yourself. But you have to come to a place of being able to stand up and speak for yourself. And that journey takes quite a bit of work for people who have been told who they are all the time, because a hijacker will always want to define your reality. Mm-hmm. They will tell you what you should think and what you should do and who you should be. And so you have to step back from that and say, maybe they're wrong. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're totally wrong. And what if they were totally wrong? Who would I be? Mm-hmm. And that gives us the opportunity then to re-examine. Are we living from our own values? Do we know what our values are? Do we know what our vision for our life is? You're allowed to have one, I know that in your work, you're always saying yes to your vision for your life, or your vision for your company, or your vision for your team. So you need to know that. And then you need to know what your beliefs are, whether that's your beliefs about money, your beliefs about how the world works, your beliefs about what's going to happen, your spiritual beliefs, your beliefs about other people. Mm-hmm. And then you have to know what your next steps are. What are my goals? What are my challenges? What do I want to create? but you have to feel worthy to have all that.
Yeah.
You have to do your work to say, okay, what that hijackal told me has nothing to do with who I am.
And that right there is the thing I hope everybody takes pause for a moment and really lets settle in, is what, and I love Betty White has a phrase that says someone else's opinion of you is none of your damn business, right? And it's that space of what someone says about you is not your truth until you choose to put an emotional attachment to it, until you choose to put a belief around that. And you have permission at any point in your life to say, I choose not to believe that anymore.
Yes.
And it really is as powerful as people ask all the time, how fast does it happen? The minute you take ownership and power back for your life, and the minute you get out of your own way. And getting out of your own way is that space that says, you know what, that doesn't serve me anymore. And I choose right here, right now, to imagine a different story for myself. And we get into this space around, right, that bigger what if, or that bigger imagine if even, which is a space that says, imagine if for one moment you didn't believe what everybody told you. Who would you be if you stopped listening to everybody else? And I just so love that you went there on that, because Rhoberta, what was the turning point for you when you got to, what was one of those defining moments when you said, imagine if I was worthy? Imagine if I picked a story that really resonated for me. When and how did that occur for you?
I was little. I looked at these two giants and I said, you guys are nuts.
Amen to that.
My mom may or may not have been right about fat and ugly, but she was right about smart. I looked at those two people and I thought, you don't make any sense at all. I never want to be like that. And it was this moment, and it's a very tender moment for me, but I'll share it with you and your audience, Candy. I was 9 years old. I'd had a babysitter. He just left when he heard my parents' car come into the driveway. He was about to teach me where babies came from. And he had been working on that for a while, getting me prepared. And he was startled by my parents. And when they came in, I told on him. And my father said nothing. And my mother said, 9-year-olds don't know those things. You have to be lying. Mm. And I said, then it must be happening to me because I know about it and I'm 9. Mm. That was the moment when everything went sideways. Like, these people do not live in the real world. And so I shifted then. Now that was the big major shift. But oh my goodness, Candy, the work that came after that in my 20s and 30s, finding hijackals put tentacles around your soul. And they are just in every tiny little place. And that's why you need to work with somebody who understands this. I've had so many clients who have gone to other people and they came to me and they said, oh, you're the only person who gets it. Mm-hmm. I have tried to explain this. And you have to go to someone who understands, not just from a book learning. I also had a therapist say to me the other day, oh, well, I can deal with these people, this personality disorder stuff. We had a whole day's training on that in my social work training. What? You had a day? I had a lifetime. Right. No, and it's taking a lifetime because they do get their tentacles around your soul, around the tiniest little beliefs, around the tiniest little expectations in life of yourself and other people. And every one of those tentacles has an end on it that says sabotage. Mm. So you do have to have this experience of waking up. And if it's this moment, great. Because for many people, you won't have realized what your parent did to you.
Yeah. And I just have to truly honor the fact that you got so vulnerable with us. Thank you for sharing that story and can feel the tenderness of that moment. And it's, I had one around the same age and I always think about the fact that no child should have that kind of defining moment. And I look at the opportunity for, because I would gather, and maybe I'm making an assumption I shouldn't, but as you went through some of that work in your 20s and 30s, there was sort of the diabolical two sides of the equation. I know for me personally, I went from, I want to create a difference. I want to stop this. I want to change the world, do something to fix this. And then there was a part of me that was so angry, and the shame and the anger and the disconnection and the why didn't anybody save me through that? Why didn't anyone protect me through that? And I felt like it was a constant battle as I was going through that work, where I was angry at the world and I wanted to change the world. And I was angry at the world and I wanted to change the world. And I had to fast forward later on where I had the opportunity to engage with a child who was going through something similar, and actually on a much more extreme scale than even I went through. And it was in that moment of recognizing that I could step into a space to empathize like most people couldn't, because I knew what that space was like, that I had that kind of epiphany or turning point where I literally hit my knees and gave gratitude for what I had experienced. And I'm wondering if you had one of those ahas in your life that said, I'd never wish this on anyone, and I've never had so much gratitude for the role models that stepped into my life that showed me what I didn't want to be, and for the experience that I was given, because I get to show up and do work that other people who spend a day in a seminar, while they mean well and their intention and heart's in the right space, they just can't get to the root because they don't know the inside of what that looks like. The way
they haven't walked in the shoes.
They haven't. And for me, I know there was a turning point. I was about 28 at the time. That was like, oh my God, I was given this for a reason. And it still gets me very, because I honor that now as a gift. And I know there's people that think that's crazy that you would ever think that, but there's such a blessing in it. And I wonder for you, when was that turning point that really was that space where you were like, this is the work I get to do because of the journey that I've had through my life?
I think that's every day, but when it really hit me, I was doing a lot of corporate work on conflict management, and so many people were coming up and talking to me after I'd spoken or, given a seminar session, and they were just so thankful to have something identified. And I started to realize, no, I really need to shine a light on this. And yes, I wouldn't want what I went through for any human being. However, what we need to know is we've got to cash that reality check, Candy, because there are statistics to show that the number of these people in our world is increasing too quickly.
Yeah.
We're at the place now where we're going to have 1 in 12 people about that we are going to meet that have these issues. And we really need skills and we need insight more than we ever have again. Right. I was speaking at the California HR conference a couple of years ago about hijackals in the workplace. And a fellow about in the middle, he put up his hand and he said, I'd like to know what happens to them in the workplace. And I said, okay, everybody brace yourself, because this is the truth. They get promoted.
I'm laughing because that's true. That is so 1,000% true.
And everybody kind of had that shadow laughter, like it's not funny, but it's true and it's funny. Right. And I said, what happens in the workplace is it's a reverse pinball effect. Instead of you pull a pin and it makes its way down, in the workplace, you pull the pin and it makes its way up, because I don't want you to go over here. Well, I don't want you to go over here. Well, I don't want you. And pretty soon they're on top of the pile. Right. I've coached some people who are senior VPs. People have brought me in and said, we can't stand this person. What do we do? So that's how they got there. And I just want to touch on something that you said earlier, because when we're speaking to ourselves and we start to develop this idea of, whoa, maybe I do have the right to speak up. Maybe I do have the right to my feelings and my thoughts and my needs and my wants. And that, like I said, that's what I define as assertive, being able to say, give yourself the right and permission to say those things without being concerned about ever saying you, right? So I'm only speaking about myself. But there's another piece to that. And this is the inside job. Say only in your head and out your mouth, say only what you want to be true about yourself.
That's so powerful.
So if you get into the habit of saying only what you want to be true about yourself, then you start playing deeply, strongly on your own team.
Right.
And that is you empowered strong, because that's an inside job.
Well, and I love that. And I love that you just connected it back to you empowered strong. And the thing that's so powerful about that is from a subconscious level, and I know we could get into a really deep discussion around this, but on a subconscious level, your subconscious doesn't know the difference between real and imagined. It only knows what you feed it. And even when you think you're joking, when it hears repetitive words and it hears repetitive frames, because we've learned definitions that are attached to those frames, on a subconscious level, it changes our belief. And
That's
so if
right.
you're showing up and saying things that, and this is where, it's that space of self-love, we say things to ourselves we wouldn't say to perfect strangers. In fact, we would be appalled. And when you're in that space to know that your power starts in that space of truly putting yourself in what you want to be, who you choose to become, how you want to show up, and use those frames, everything starts to open up access around you and aligns, because it's where your belief is centered and you start attracting those things to you. So I love that you went there. And I think about the fact that this number, and I know, because I do a lot of sharing statistics around, I think it's amazing how we talk about the American dream. And when you look at anything, we are number one in stress, anxiety, fear, use of antidepressants. There's 1 out of 4 women that's recorded that's on some sort of antidepressant. There's 1 out of 10 over the age of 13, and those numbers are going up drastically.
Yes.
When you know that that's the reality, when you know that we've created this space of, I love how you use that term, veiled blame, and entitlement is what has become our cultural norm.
Mm-hmm.
When you start to think about the work you're doing and you start to think about the impact and the movement and the space you're playing, what's the next imagine if for you? What's the space that lights you up that says, I know I get to stand in this space and I get to be the voice and lead? What does that start to look like for you? What really gets you like lit up in this space to say, and this is where I'm going to create that change and create that movement forward?
Okay, well, there's an answer to that. I do a lot of things by guidance because my partner and I wrote a book called Soul Solitude, taking time for our souls to catch up. And so sitting quietly, it's very simple. No technique involved. Just sit, fall silent, and listen. And it's available on Amazon too. If you're having trouble with the idea of meditate, then take that one out and just say spend time in soul solitude. It's very, very simple. So the answer is that if I'm sitting listening, first of all, my mission in life is to help people stop tolerating abuse, wherever that is. And I was about to write another book called Stop Tolerating Abuse, Speak Up, Stand Strong. And it was really powerful. And all of a sudden, my guidance on that went cold. Like nothing. And you know what came up is you've got all this stuff about hijackals and conflict and everything. You need the balancing piece. So now I just started a page on Facebook that people can join in and get beautiful graphics. And it's called Focus on Forward.
Oh, I love that.
Because what we need to do is understand, never deny what happened in the past. But there's a reason that we have a really large windshield and a small rearview mirror. And too many of us are living in the rearview mirror too much of the time. So I want to help people focus on forward. So I'm doing the two things which provide balance for me, because if I'm spending all my time helping people who are in these critical places, and I love to do that. I work with people in crisis, whether that's a couple, an individual, or a company. However, we need the balancing piece to offer to say, and focus on forward. Can't change the past, can't change the other person, but I can deal with me. So I can focus on forward. So that's what's up. That's what's flipping my skirt and floating my boat these days, right?
Wow.
Because it provides that balance, and it allows us to be gentle with ourselves while we do hard work.
Mm-hmm. Wow, how beautiful is that? Focus on forward. I love that, and invite you all to go out and check that out on Facebook. Love the idea of that. And I really love the way you say, sit, fall silent, and listen. And I know for someone, and many of my listeners are wired a little bit like me, and I know that sometimes that's really hard for us to just be still and
but 90
allow
seconds counts.
90, and that's the thing I tell people, because people get stuck on, I don't know how to meditate, I don't know how to journal. I'm like, stop looking for the rules. It's about giving yourself, I don't care if it's 30 seconds, I don't care if it's a minute. Can you just be still? Because what happens is, if you listen for the whispers, if you listen, you've got to get out all the noise that's around you and all the stuff that's happening. And it starts with shutting off the television, getting out of your phone, getting off social media, getting out of your computer. And I have a client I was just talking to, I said, she goes, oh, I wind down in the night. And I go, do you ever allow yourself to just sit in silence? And she looked at me as if that was crazy.
Yeah,
and
who
I
does
said,
it?
30 seconds in silence can change your life. Just to notice, even to be a witness to just the energy and the space around you. Because if you don't tune that down, you don't hear the whispers.
Okay, we've got so much in this. I just want to add something. I think that our world teaches us to live like this.
Oh, absolutely.
This is our head. This is our feet. So push, push, push. Be more, do more, have more, repeat. Right?
And for those of you that are listening and not watching, she's got her fist up and a bent arm where it's really blocking herself, and it's in that fighting, pushing, just uphill battle kind of mode.
That's right. But if our fist is our head and the elbow is our feet, what sitting in solitude is coming upright. Because when you're pushing forward with your head further ahead than your feet, you have to keep going, because you're going to fall on your face if you stop. But what sitting in soul solitude is giving yourself a few moments to come upright and just be where you are. To be fully in the present moment, not pushing anything, not trying to get anywhere. Just be there in the presence and say, wow, here I am. What is actually bubbling up within me? What is happening in the silence around me? What are the messages that are here for me? I've spent a lot of my life as a spiritual teacher, so this is bringing all these pieces together. And sitting quietly, even if it's 80 seconds, 60 seconds, 62 seconds, just do it, because it puts you in touch with reality. It lets you be present to what's going on without the pressure of moving forward. Yeah. And we all need to do that.
Yeah, and I want you to notice one of the things that Rhoberta did as she was saying that. She actually let out a very big, deep breath as she was saying that. And one of the things that, for those of you that have a hard time getting still and quiet, it may just be sitting. It's that space to create that openness and take a deep breath. Because most people that don't know how to be still are doing that shallow breathing and getting stuck up in their chest and head. And if all you can do is take 3 deep belly breaths, by the way, if you do them and do them intentionally and slowly, you will sit in silence for at least 30 seconds. Because if you take in the oxygen and allow it to fill every cell of your body, feel it from the very tip of your head down to the tips of your toes, and take in the air from your core and then release it out as deliberately, that in itself will allow you to create some stillness. It's amazing. And I say that as someone who really struggled for a long time meditating and getting quiet. It was the ability to take a deep breath. It was the ability to open that up, right?
What I call that, Candy, is the least expensive, most luxurious vacation you can take.
I love that.
and in Kaizen for Couples, I actually give this exercise of breathing in strongly for a count of 4 through your nose, holding it for a count of 7, breathing out through your mouth for a count of 8, and do it, as you said, 3 times.
Nice box breathing, right?
Well, the reason for that is a lot of reason is what you said. But what we need to know, again, back to the facts and figures, is when you take in a deep breath, you're taking in oxygen. It takes 20 seconds for that one breath to go all the way around your body and your bloodstream and pick up carbon dioxide to expel through your mouth. So you are reoxygenating yourself in those 3 breaths, and you will watch your shoulders go down from your earlobes. All of a sudden you go, whoa, I'm here, right? And that's worth it. I have my clients set their cell phone alarms for 6 times a day, and they do just that.
Yep.
And they take 3 deep breaths, and they just sit for 90 seconds and say, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I needing? What am I wanting? Get back in touch with yourself. If you're a leader, you must do this because you have so much on your plate. You can't assimilate and integrate what's going on unless you sit down and say, okay, I did my 3 breaths. What am I thinking, feeling, needing, and wanting? And you won't believe the clarity that'll come to you from that.
Yeah, not only do you get mental clarity, you do get, I just get goosebumps or God bumps hearing you say that, because it's that space of not only do you get such mental clarity, your energy, for those of you that get depleted during the day, it is amazing how taking a deep breath can bring you into a space of feeling vibrant and alive and present. It is truly one of them. And I do the same thing. I have clients who we will set reminders that not only are we doing breath, but we're going back to something you said earlier, is knowing our core values. And we have those 3 words that say, how am I doing with my 3 words that are meaningful for how I choose to show up in this world? And I love that space around, as you talk about, and Rhoberta, we're going to have you come back because we're running out of time. And I want to just keep digging into this just juicy conversation and really helping everyone that's listening really understand how much power you have to get connected back to yourself. And I love that you talked about it's a way to get in touch, right? And as it's a great segue to talk about, because there's people that want to know more. They want to understand, because there isn't a person on this planet that does not interact with a hijackal at some point in their life. We all have hijackals. They show up across every aspect of our life. Or you are not leaving your house, and you might be the hijackal if you're not leaving your house, right? And so how do people get in touch with you? What is the best way for them to really tap into the work you're doing, get to know more about how they can adjust and create that balance and start to reclaim that power for themselves? What's the best way for them to reach you?
Well, the best way is to come to my website, forrelationshiphelp.com, FOR relationship, HELP.com, because there you'll see you can click on the hijackals tab. You can get my free ebook, How to Spot a Hijackal. So if you're not sure, you can find out for sure there. You could take my free passive aggressive checklist. You'll see also where you can take the checklists. I have a YouTube channel. Surprise, it's called For Relationship Help. So there are hundreds of videos over there that will help you with specific things. And when you're on my website, you can also subscribe to Tips for Relationships. I do that on a sort of regular basis, but it'll keep you in touch with the work and all. But following me on video is the fastest way, because it's the fastest way to deliver content to you. So go to my Facebook page, Relationship Help Doctor.
Yeah, and I will tell you, Rhoberta has just a wealth of information out there. And I mean, you can see we packed a lot in just the short time we had together today. And so I really invite you and encourage you to check out the work that Dr. Rhoberta Shaler is doing. It is phenomenal. As I said, we all have stories around where hijackals, and some of you probably have some hijackals that still have those tentacles in your soul. I love that phrase. That's so powerful, and you can create the visual. But as we're closing things out, and I mean, we've had just such a rich discussion.
Yes.
I know some things are opening up even as we talked, and I'm listening to, your brilliance. What's a last takeaway or something you'd like to leave this audience with as we close things out?
In any relationship, there are 3 things, Candy, that will tell you if it's healthy. There has to be equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. And if they are not there, you have a problem. Deal with it. Because we don't like to face up to the fact that there's a problem, because that then requires us being part of the solution. So if there's not equality, reciprocity, and mutuality in your relationship, have a really good look at it and say, no, I'm not having a relationship without those.
Wow. That is incredibly powerful. Equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. And think about the fact that when we even opened the show and talked about what it means to be a leader, leader is not something that is done to you, you were born with. It's not something that was bequeathed to you. It is something we all have the ability to stand in with owning our own power and standing in that space. And one of those choices in that space is around taking personal responsibility, and to have that awareness and then have the courage to hold up a mirror and say, am I getting those 3 things in the relationships with myself and with others? It's your opportunity to take that responsibility and have a bigger conversation. It's your opportunity to put those boundaries and those parameters around that, and know that it starts with you saying yes to yourself. And so just deep gratitude, admiration, appreciation, love for this incredible woman who has joined us today. She is not only just an incredible source of inspiration for me, she's also a very dear friend of mine. And I feel so honored and blessed, and getting very emotional again, that she is in my life. So Rhoberta, thank you so much for sharing your genius and light with us.
Oh, you're so welcome, Candy. I so appreciate you and love you and all that you do in the world to bring light to organizations. So important, because all organizations are a bunch of people who hopefully share a mission for the benefit of all concerned.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with that, I hope you all will take the opportunity to say yes to yourself, stand in your brilliance, and learn to destroy the noise, including the hijackals in your life, so that you can live your life with passion, purpose, and in a space to be present. I will catch up with you next time. Please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode, as we have amazing leaders like Rhoberta who are joining us every week. So with that, just know I'm sending you all heart-to-heart loves. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch up with you next time.